Sketches. Roughly drawn artistic renderings depicting some aspect of our real lives. So it is at times with memories. What was once a vivid image in our mind, with the passing of time, begins to more closely resemble a sketch of what was. This is the case with the history of rural Northampton Township. As the area's early residents dwindle in number, there are fewer and fewer references to convey what it was like to live here back in the good old days. As these aerial photographs depict, there were many farms and very few small home sites in the township 60 years ago. The small-town simplicity of this farming community was quickly displaced by suburban sprawl in the 1950s. Some of that early history remains documented in grainy photographs and rudimentary home movies to remind us of the calmer and quieter lifestyle that existed here just a few generations ago. Since it was merely the unfolding of everyday life at the time, no specific record was made of who was being filmed or the occasion for the gathering. Only in retrospect do we now recognize the value of these archives and the glimpse they provide into our more pastoral origins. What follows is an effort to combine some of these timeless images with a narrative text to identify the persons and places depicted. Considerable effort was put in by a great number of volunteers into matching as many faces and scenes as possible. Our heartfelt thanks goes out to everyone who helped in the project. The fact that much remains unidentified and the absence of any particular context makes this video not so much a complete history, but more of a series of sketches from our past. We hope you will enjoy these sketches.
Starting in the 1920s, the Tyler family, drawing on the great wealth they had accumulated through business and investment, bought up much of Northampton Township over a 10-year period. George and Stella Elkins Tyler purchased a total of 17 farms adjoining each other along the Neshaminy Creek. They eventually built a vast estate and a working farm corporation with its own feed mill. The following scenes depict the many names and faces of those who worked for Neshaminy Farms or others who lived and played on the estate lands. In the 1960s, the estate and farmlands were turned over to the county for use as a community college and a large recreational park for all residents to enjoy. The park still serves as a reminder of what Northampton Township was like in its rural, undeveloped state.
Tyler's wealth and political power allowed them to build their own personal dam on the Neshaminy Creek to run their mill turbines and create livestock water supplies. In today's world, local, state, and federal regulators would have a much different look at private dam construction on major waterways.
Much of Old Richboro, depicted in this footage, has vanished in the past 50 years. Churches, schools, historic buildings, and homes have given way to wider streets, strip malls, and shopping centers. The surrounding farmland, appearing in these scenes to go on forever, has today become housing developments everywhere you turn. Such is the way of progress, but for those who appreciate it, this video provides a glimpse back at the way things were.
These scenes and photos were taken at the west side of 2nd Street Pike, near the Bustleton Avenue intersection. The black and white footage shows the very early years of the Davis home site, the tin and metal repair shop, and their Oakland car dealership. Jack Frey's machine shop and Turner's iron shop were across the pike. Later, the company demolished the Black Bear Inn and a former stone schoolhouse. They built their new showroom around a deserted church and started selling Pontiac cars in the 1940s. Photos taken recently show the present land and dealership awaiting future changes.
2nd Street Pike scenes like this tell much about early Richboro. The drainage ditches show an absence of today's higher and wider street, with no storm and sewage pipes, as well as a livestock fence around the Addisville Reformed Church to either keep livestock in or out from a nearby farm. This school building was the original Richboro School, built in the 1800s until 1913. It then became a fire hall in these 1920s children's scenes and then Doherty's repair shop. It was demolished as Davis Pontiac expanded for their car lot in the early 1950s. Old Richboro tales have said that the 18 to 20-year-old teacher, Mary Finney, had to be helped by several of the older students with more difficult questions and answers due to her youthful age. Harry Gill's camera pans Richboro's big intersection during the 1920s. It is hard to picture this intersection today, as the hotel has been moved back and all buildings and farms pictured are gone. The Walkers' white stone house was opposite the hotel, while an ice cream shop is not in the film. 2 narrow, muddy lanes are now 3 wide paved lanes at this busy crossroad. Harry Gill filmed his own farmland from a hill facing Bustleton Pike, with Almshouse Road, hills, and cemetery on the horizon. Today's similar view was photographed from a housing development, as this view is no longer there. Gill's farmhouse remains, but no longer has a lane and must be accessed by way of the housing development.
During the 1920s and 30s, farm equipment companies often came out to a local farm for a demonstration of their newest machinery. This Harry Gill clip shows several attractive young ladies who normally in those times would not have been part of the labor force of the farm, promoting the sale of heavy equipment.
The presidential rally for Herbert Hoover's re-election seen here was filmed by Harry Gill on Memorial Day, 1931. This mass rally was held at Valley Forge Park, but perhaps you could draw the conclusion of Gill's strong involvement in politics, especially 3 years into the Great Depression. Later, as the motorcade drove by, Harry Gill's great camera work captured a glimpse of President Hoover waving from his grand limousine. In a rural township without a theater or a television during the early 30s, this footage must have been shown many times to groups having never seen a president so close on film. Harry and Alva Gill, with their Churchville friends, started a club on the second floor of a building behind their railroad office during Prohibition. The club grew in popularity, and by the 1930s, they purchased a large home on Bustleton Avenue near Gravel Hill Road and enlarged the home for club activities. A pool table, card table, and small dance floor were some of the club's amenities for the members.
A major rail line, completed in the mid-1800s, linked many of the surrounding communities to the growing metropolis of Philadelphia. It soon awakened the quiet farming towns of Northampton Township with their first taste of the new suburban lifestyle. The railroad allowed these city folk to live outside the boundaries of the bustling city where they worked. In Churchville, large and more fashionable homes began to spring up throughout the community. As these photos show, the Tie and Derby commuter crowd was at the railroad station every morning. The small towns grew as more housing was needed for tradesmen and other support personnel. More families always means more children and larger schools. In Richboro, a new school was built in 1913 to replace the 1800 stone building that had become outmoded and much too small. Rail travel gave way to the automobile in the 20th century, and the trains ceased to run in the 1960s. Today, however, Churchville still boasts numerous grand Victorian-era homes, and it proudly remains free of shopping centers. Richboro, on the other hand, did become a bit more commercial over the years. These scenes depict many residents from both towns.
Craven's buggy is heading into Richboro on 2nd Street Pike, with Fred Turner's house in the distance. The Luff's farmhouse, which is now a funeral home, can be seen to the upper left. Bert Leadham is shown with a 3-horse team and wagon piled high with pitchfork-loaded hay. Baling devices had not come into common use by farmers in the mid-1920s. This heavy hay load was to be emptied as loose hay into a barn by a ceiling hoist device called a harpoon. There was no bank building like this scene depicts in Churchville or Richborough. Most persons guessed it was located in Southampton or Newtown. The weekly early morning commuters at the Churchville Railroad Station were identified by their standard tie, vest, and derby. They were not farmers. With the milk loading dock past the railroad station, you can see the Knowles Avenue Hill void of buildings at the muddy Bustleton Avenue Road intersection in downtown Churchville. Few roads in the township were paved in the late 20s.
These scenes of a picnic gathering held in the late 1920s yield a fascinating glimpse at styles and manners from that era. The serving staff and fine tableware in use indicate this was a rather special gathering in someone's backyard. Harry Gill made certain he closely filmed every face at this affair, indicating it was of some importance at the time. We can only guess at the cost of such an event back then, but the fashions and deluxe cars depicted make it a testament to the unbridled affluence of the Roaring Twenties.
To gaze over the rolling hills of a Northampton Township farm in the late 1920s possibly was taken for granted. This view, as well as most others of that time period, are no longer part of the landscape today.
There appears to be a 20-year gap in the footage available for editing into this presentation. Perhaps Harry Gill stopped filming during the Depression and the war years. Or possibly film was difficult to obtain during that same period. We are left to guess at the best explanation for this gap.
This is a mid-1940s summer flood scene of the Neshaminy Creek at Chain Bridge on 2nd Street Pike north of Richboro that started the decline of Bryan's campsites, cabins, swimming, and boating. It was a popular spot in that era for years. Today, the ever-popular Chain Bridge site is a mass of tangled weeds, vines, and woods, and is no longer used in any capacity. The mid to late 1940s lifestyles of picnics and parties had changed drastically, as shown in these post-war short scenes. Notice how fashions and etiquette had also changed from the 1920s black and white picnic shown earlier in this film. Cigarette smoking, beer drinking, barbecues, and swimming pools had arrived in Northampton Township. A dairy cow giving birth to a calf almost on the front lawn was a common sight to behold in the 1940s, but inconceivable today in our modern Northampton Township housing tracts.